Have you ever noticed that a lot of the wealthiest people out there, they don't seem to own much, at least not in their own name? No houses, no cars, none of the big stuff. It's kind of weird, right? It just seems to go against everything we're taught about building wealth. Well, it turns out there's a really powerful reason for this, and it all comes down to one crucial little distinction.
And really, this whole strategy, it all comes down to this one powerful idea. See, the moment you personally own something, it becomes taxable, it becomes seizable, and it becomes really, really vulnerable. The wealthy get this, so they play a totally different game. One that's not about how much you can accumulate, but all about how you structure it.
I know, it sounds a little subtle, maybe a bit abstract. But in the real world, the difference between ownership and control is everything. It's the difference between building a house of cards and building a fortress. And to really get it, you have to see what happens when things go wrong.
You know, for most of us, owning things outright, paying off the house, having the car title in your name, that feels like the ultimate goal. It feels safe. But that feeling, well, it can be a really dangerous illusion. So let's just walk through a scenario. This is based on a real story. You're driving, you make a mistake, you run a red light, and there's a bad accident. It's a horrible, horrible situation, but your first thought is probably, okay, deep breaths, that's what insurance is for.
And here's the kicker. Your insurance is your first line of defense, for sure, but it is not a silver bullet. Some events, some accidents, are so catastrophic they can just blow right past your policy limit. And all of a sudden, the damages are way, way more than your insurance is ever going to cover.
And this is the moment everything changes. Because once that insurance money runs out, the lawyers on the other side, they start looking at you, personally. They do something called an asset search to figure out if you're worth suing for more.
And what do you think they find? Well, anything and everything in your personal name is now a target. Your home, your savings account, your investment portfolio. They can even go after your future income through garnishings. The very things you thought made you secure are now what puts you most at risk.
This is where the wealthy make a huge pivot. They don't try to avoid risk. I mean, that's impossible. Instead, they completely change the structure of how they hold their assets to insulate themselves from that risk.
Okay, look at this, because this slide just breaks it down perfectly. On the left, you've got that traditional ownership mindset, where everything you have is tied directly to you. But on the right, you see the control mindset. It's all about creating a financial firewall. The question completely changes from, what do I own, to how are my assets structured to protect me if everything goes sideways?
Now, how is this even possible, legally speaking? Well, it all comes down to a concept called the separate legal person. The law literally treats a corporation or an LLC as its own person. And this is the magic part. This means its problems are not your problems, and your problems are not its problems. This is the one-liner you have to remember. It sounds like such a small shift in language, right? But legally, it's a canyon. If you get sued personally, a creditor can't just stroll in and take an asset that belongs to a totally different legal person.
Okay, so we've covered the why. It's pretty clear. Now let's get into the how. What are the actual tools that people use to build this financial fortress?
For the most part, it really just comes down to two main things: LLCs and trusts. You can think of LLCs as the perfect tool for holding assets that make money, like rental properties or your business. Trusts, on the other hand, are often used for personal stuff, like your house, and are more focused on privacy and planning for the future. These are the basic building blocks.
And the process itself is actually pretty simple. First, you create the entity, the LLC or the trust. Second, you transfer the title of the asset, let's say it's a rental property, from your personal name into the name of the LLC. And third, and this is key, you remain in complete control as the manager of that LLC. You still call all the shots.
And what this does is absolutely brilliant. You're creating a solid wall between your active, risk-generating life, your business, your driving, your day-to-day operations, and your passive, wealth-building assets. So if a fire starts on one side of that wall, the firewall prevents it from burning down everything on the other side.
Now, adopting this mindset and this structure, it's not just about playing defense. It actually unlocks some seriously powerful advantages for building wealth much, much faster. Let's look at the three biggest ones.
All right, first up is the big one, the whole foundation of this thing.
It's liability protection through privacy. Remember that asset search we talked about from the car accident? Well, when a lawyer's initial search comes up empty, they find no major assets in your personal name. You immediately become a much, much less attractive person to sue.
They're way more likely to just settle for the insurance money because trying to get through all your legal structures is just too expensive and too much work.
Okay, the second payoff. This one is huge and a lot of people misunderstand it.
And that is tax flexibility. Now let's be crystal clear. This is not about tax evasion. This is about tax timing. Think about it. If you earn 10 grand personally, you're getting taxed on it this year. But if your LLC earns that same 10 grand, you can choose to leave it in the company and use the full pre-tax amount to reinvest. You control when you pay yourself, and because of that, when that money becomes personal taxable income.
And that leads right into the third, and maybe the most powerful advantage of all. Cash flow and leverage. This is all about turning your wealth from a static pile of money into a dynamic machine. The money that stays inside the company can be reinvested to buy more assets. And then those new assets, which are also owned by the company, can be used as collateral to borrow more money for even more assets. It becomes this incredible self-perpetuating machine where your wealth is compounding before it ever has to get paid out to you and get taxed.
So yeah, the structures and the legal tools, they might seem a little complex from the outside. But the entire strategy, the whole thing, really just starts with a simple, fundamental shift in how you see the world.
This, right here, is the most important takeaway from all of this. The same company laws, the same tax rules, the same tools, they're available to pretty much everyone. This isn't about having millions of dollars. It's about being deliberate and intentional with how you structure what you have right now and what you plan to have in the future.
So in the end, that's the real question this whole strategy forces you to ask yourself. Is the goal just to own a bunch of stuff, or is the goal to build systems? Systems that protect you, that give you flexibility, and that compound your wealth over time. It's about making that shift from being the asset to controlling the machine.